Welcome to Mr. Knuckles Wood Shop. I'm bending aluminum today. It's easy if you know how to measure and you've got the right equipment. If you're like me and you like to do things a little more cheaply rather than pay somebody else to do it, and you know how expensive things are these days, it's not a bad thing to be able to do. I don't know what I'm doing, but like always, YouTube's your friend and your friends are your friends. Now you have to buy a brake, but the idea is you buy a used one, you sell it for the same amount when you're finished, and it doesn't really cost you anything other than your time, and maybe you might have to buy a couple of specific tools. I'll show you what you need. You probably already have most of it, but if you like doing things cheaply, it's not a bad thing to do. So let's get started. This is what I'm working on today. I've put some window trim on and I'm just capping it with aluminum. If you're going to do some aluminum, you need a brake. I got this one off Marketplace fairly cheaply. Turns out the reason it was cheap is because this piano hinge, which is the most important thing, and I didn't realize that, but I don't know if you can see it, but anyways, it's broken in spots. It still works, but if you're going to buy a brake, that's one thing you definitely want to look at is the piano hinge. Another thing you need is a way to deliver your aluminum into the brake. I just made this one up. You can buy them, but I'm sure they're way more expensive than it cost me to scab this one together. Aluminum comes in coils, so you need a box to put the coil in and a little slot at the bottom for the aluminum to come out of, and then you just pull it into the brake. It's easy. Other tools you'll need are a measurement and marking device, hammer, and some aluminum nails. A good solid blade, brand new and really sharp, is important. A variety of snips. You need two for sure, because one's left-handed and one's right-handed, and I've got a couple others. Something to make small bends in aluminum, so that little vice grip thing is what I'm using. A couple of squares, or one square anyways, and I've been using this hammer to flatten some things out. Okay, here's a good example of why you need two different pairs of snips at least. Notice I'm trying to cut this corner off. When I put this pair of snips in, it fits nicely and I can get right up tight to the corner. But if I was to use this one, when I try to put it in there, it won't let me get to the corner. So when I say one's left-handed and one's right-handed, it's got nothing to do with using your left or right hand. And that's probably not called left and right-handed. It's just, it's two different sides. Also, gloves are important. Okay, in order to cut aluminum, first of all, you're going to need a straight edge. Obviously, I didn't mention that, but you do. I'm just using a piece of drip edge. And make sure you square it up with a square, and then just hold it down tight. Start off nice and easy. You're going to make a couple of passes. Good sharp knife. You don't actually have to get through it. You just have to score it really, really well. And then put the brake loose. Grab a pair of gloves. Just get your hand underneath it and push it up, making sure that it doesn't scratch along this sharp edge of the brake. And then just squish it together, and it will come apart. And that's that. It's much easier to cut it in the brake than it is to cut it free. All you do is get the brake so that it's down, but it allows you to slide. You don't even have to mark it. You just have to use your tape on either end. You just go back and forth until both sides are good. Close the brake nice. Make sure it's nice and tight. Take your knife. You're going to score it 2, maybe 3 times. 3 scores is probably more than you actually need, but you just lift it up all the way. Push it back down once, and lift it up again, and it snaps. Couple quick things. Very important that you measure correctly and also put the aluminum in the brake the right side up, because sometimes you want the color out on the outside of a bend, sometimes you want the color on the inside of the bend, and as soon as you make that mistake, that piece of aluminum's cooked. You can't really fix it. And aluminum's very expensive, so you want to make sure that you're measuring correctly and that you're thinking your bends through before you start just bending things up. Using a brake is super simple. You've got this upper lever that closes the jaws. If you close them just a little bit, it'll hold your aluminum in place, but it'll let you slide it around, and so you can move it back and forth for your measurements. Again, you don't really have to actually mark your aluminum. You just have to use your tape back and forth and make sure both ends, obviously the aluminum's straight, so as long as both ends are good, then you should be good to go. Lock the jaws, pull it up to whatever bend you want. You start to get used to where you need to stop to get a 90 degree or whatever degree you're looking for. And if you're not exactly right on point, then it's not a big deal because aluminum bends a little bit. So when you go to install it, it will bend around whatever you're working on. This is what I'm working on today. It's just a window cap. But you can see that some bends are inside bends and some bends are outside bends. Inside and outside being the color, right? And so you really got to think it through, because if you don't put it in the brake the right way, you're not going to end up with the right bend. So here's a finished product of a piece that I bent for the top of the window. I've done a little bit of snipping, a little bit of bending with this tool. It's pretty easy, and that's the point of this video, is that it's pretty easy to do. I don't know what I'm doing, so anybody can figure this out. I'm not sure if this would be the right method of creating this piece, but it's going to do the job for me, and that's all I'm really about. What this video is about is that you can do it on your own. You don't have to be an expert or a professional. You can pull it off. So completed, installed, nailed on. One thing I don't really understand or get, I haven't looked into it, is where you should be nailing. Obviously you want to nail out of the way, and this is going to be covered up by the siding and the J-trim, as are the nailing flanges, so it's not going to look that bad. But I've put some other pieces on and I've maybe nailed it too much or whatever, because they start to bend. I get these ripples in them, and I'm not sure how to fix that. But anyways, that's the top of the window, and I've done the rest as well, and everything's looking fine. All right, it's easy to do, and you can do it. So that's the video, bending your own aluminum. It's pretty easy to do. If you're a DIYer, then it's something you can definitely handle. The takeaways should be, it's cheaper, obviously. It's not hard to do, and you can get it done. YouTube is your friend, and any other resources you have available. You might have to buy some equipment, but the brake is the big one, and you can sell it for the same amount. You know, if you buy a used one, you can sell it for the same amount when you finish the big job you're doing. And the other small tools that you might need are great for a DIYer to have, so you might as well buy them. And you get some satisfaction out of it in the end, knowing that you did the job yourself. All right, so there you go.